I've had an enormously privileged birth, jumping into action, a dynasty that goes back 1500 years.
Wow.
So you could say that I'm 77th generation.
Good morning, good evening, Princess. How are you?
Good morning. Well, good evening to me, but a very, very good morning to you, Stephen. I'm so happy to be speaking with you today.
I am so grateful to have you on. Our mutual friend Wendy obviously made the introduction, and I'm very grateful to her.
My name is Jahnavi, of course, and I was born in India and I was raised here for some time. Then I lived overseas for about 16 years. So you could say that I'm 77th generation. It's a marvelous, marvelous legacy, and I'm constantly humbled by it. It's a reminder. It's a reminder to be of service at every given point in time and in life. It's about setting a standard of influence. It's about upholding um, traditions, but adaptive traditions based on as
Mm,
we progress modern day. It's heritage reimagined, and it's about upholding human value systems,
mm.
and value systems not only from a legacy perspective, but for humanity at large. So yes, that's my background. But I did live overseas. I ran away from it all at the age of, well, I don't want to disclose my age to you now. Come on. Sorry, no, no, I don't believe in all that iffy nonsense. I'm 40 years old. I turned proudly 40 this year, but I was away for about 16 years of my life, and it was a great experience. It was a humbling experience. You know, one lived off pocket money and worked three jobs at university, left home at 8, came home at 2 in the morning, and started it all over again. And I
Wow.
must say, the fact that I chose to do that and at some point refused to take pocket money after I started earning for myself really was a lesson in life. You know, when you're down to your last
Mm.
$10 and you still haven't reached the end of the month and you don't want to use your father's credit card,
Yeah.
it's a struggle. But it really makes you understand how life cannot always be easy for so many out there. And I can laugh about it now, but I promise you, there were many nights I cried myself to sleep, especially when I started my boutique investment bank when I was 25 years old. That was a
Wow.
nightmare. Off until obviously it stabilized and somebody decided to pay me for my services. Good Lord, did I cry myself to sleep every night? So, anyway, so that's just a little bit about me. I'm a capitalist with heart. I've over the past few years launched a platform called Power of Policy to create more mindful, economically, socially, and politically conscious policy making methodologies and practices, or perhaps trying to influence such practices. Because of course I don't make policy, we can only try. But I think over the few years we've made a lot of progress in how to pragmatically affect policy making without really being part of the governmental structures, but working alongside them.
Mm, mm.
And that's led us to some brilliant adventures, but also some very, very practical, tangible projects that we hope will address a lot of the global crisis at the moment that we are facing.
By listening to you and just kind of doing a little bit of research of who you are, the thing is, what gets you up in the mornings? What motivates you?
My dog mostly, you know, because and I mean, when he wants to wake up, there's no power on earth that will allow me to get those few extra minutes in. But no, jokes aside, what wakes me up in the morning, and I'll be very honest, it's perhaps a very tunnel visioned purpose. It's my family. It's my parents,
Mm.
husband. It's my home. It's protecting and preserving what's ours. I mean, to be quite honest, every morning my first thought is always them. I've always woken up with, well, husband after I got married, of course, but he's been added onto the list wholeheartedly, but obviously only quite recently. But yes, it's always been the first thought is always family, and my dog,
Fam,
of course.
what
Yeah.
kind of dog?
Oh, it's a British bulldog. He's my
Uh,
child. He's my
uh,
furry little son.
that's
Sometimes a bit.
that's it's funny. One of my friends, his daughter just went away to university, and he has this dog, and it's very cute. And he just posted something on the on his dog on LinkedIn. He goes, "This guy's a blessing." And you know, animals are they communicate to you. They do talk to you, and uh, communication doesn't have to be verbal. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It never does. In fact, the less verbal the communication, the more authentic it is, I believe, especially in the youth.
I agree. Which takes me to the next question. So, you know, obviously, folks in the investment world know who you are. How do you differentiate between authenticness, somebody being authentic, versus someone with an agenda?
It's a very difficult question to answer, but I don't know whether I've managed to figure that out myself yet. But what I do know for a fact today is well, are two things. One, with enough exposure and experiences in life where you're not protected and immensely guarded yourself or by others, you learn by mistake sometimes, and some really horrifying ones, or mild ones, to assess people, to
Mm,
understand and immediately know the true nature of the person you're having a conversation with. And I must say, this is not a self-congratulatory sort of, pat on the back, but I've somehow been blessed, truly blessed with this ability since I was about 8 years old.
wow.
So and I say that very specifically because I was pretty much started advising my parents, specifically my father, who's just he's just a man who believes anything and everything people tell him. And it just comes from a very good place in his heart. If you're nice or pretending to be nice, he just believes that you're nice. And so I remember telling him
Mm.
for the first time in my life at the age of 8 that I don't think your friends are nice, these particular ones. And of course nobody believed the, round little 88-year-old who was trying to be all wise and
Wow.
sage. But it came to be true a few years later. And I think, and that ability, I think, over life experiences and, good, bad, and ugly has only become perhaps a little bit more fine-tuned. So I've count myself very lucky. So I think one is, as I said, I think it's about living life and seeing it through for all the effervescent, vibrant experiences that it throws at you. The
Mm,
other part, of course, I would say is I think as you save yourself from the ones that perhaps are not meant to be within
mm,
your realm of being or in your life in any meaningful fashion is
mm,
by creating the purest form of authenticity within yourself.
mm,
I know for a fact that today I have a better group of friends and work relationships, right? Because I'm more self-aware. And so,
mm,
therefore, organically and naturally, I have managed to be have this I managed to sort almost garner this gift of the right people in my life, the
mm,
right affiliations, work-wise, the right alliances, right partners, right teams, down to the operational sort of granular level of granularity of operational work. um, I am better positioned today with the people around me, be it social, personal, or commercially, than I was, say, even I would 8 years ago,
mm,
right? Or 10 years ago.
mm,
And I think that's come from the fact that when you're self-aware, you don't make decisions based on ego. You don't make
mm,
decisions based on your own insecurities, issues, emotional baggages, or fear factors, or whatever it might be. So I think
mm.
when you become that close to your most natural self, without the layers of nuances that life tends to create in our personalities and our
Mm.
point of views, you just end up with in a better place with the people around you.
And I can't imagine really being, actually, I can, you know, as a filmmaker, when you're making the movie, if you're directing or you're the actor, you're the producer, your entire world changes on the set. It becomes a very surreal kind of a thing. You know, everybody's trying to get you coffee, everybody's trying to do this. You know, I mean, I worked with Robert De Niro on a movie,
Oh,
and he was
how
one of Yeah.
what an institution, right? God.
Yeah, yeah. So the movie that I wrote and produced and I acted in with him was called Bus 657 Heist, and he read the original script and he really liked it, and then he wanted a bigger role, which was an amazing thing, and so that was a real blessing. But I saw the difference between normal life and all of a sudden you're on a pedestal and everybody's walking on glass shelves trying to, be what you do. But on the other aspect of what you're talking about is there's wishful thinking on one's part, not necessarily my part or your part, just one's part. And then there's the reality. And I think
Yeah.
the business world is kind of a shrewd world. Like you go into a meeting or into a prospect partnership with an idea of ideology of what it is you want, the goodness that you're really looking for. And
Mm.
then all of a sudden the details come in, the little pieces of glass come in that you're like, wait a minute, what? Like, what is this guy thinking? How do you deal with that? I'm sure you've come across that quite a bit.
So I mean, I guess there are two phases of how I have dealt with that and how I deal with it now. Earlier, it was about I was never very aggressive, but I've been known to be poignantly firm and intimidating in the past. But that was all that was curative, you know. So when you want to deal with situations like that, when you see through a certain situation, a certain person, and you want to rein it in, or you want to deliver a message, you know, as you said, those pieces of glass, so, right? And you've read through, or presumably expect ulterior agendas and motives. Am I on the right track? Is that your
Oh,
question?
100%. You're on point. Yeah.
So I think earlier it used to be again, like I don't know how to describe it correctly, but it wasn't aggressive, but it was aggressive. It was passive aggression, but very obviously curated passive aggression to make my point known and my stance, you know, felt, and my presence. Um, my presence became the thing that would avoid any further complications. But the
Mm,
presence that I was trying to create was was a curated
mm,
uh, a personality, perhaps, or a
mm,
narrative. I think that used to be me, I think, till about my late 20s. And I think then I realized that I don't need to do all this performative nonsense, right? You know, the performative firmness, performative intimidation. And I think today, when I am in these situations, um, it's about it's become more about the fact that again you remain as authentic as possible. You put your ego aside, pride aside, all those issues, all those personality traits or characteristics that will make you behave uncharacteristically. However, that on its own creates the exact impact that you need, which is there is no need for aggression. There is no need for excessive
mm.
firmness. There is no need for posturing. That's the word I've been looking for.
Yeah.
Absolutely zero posturing. Standing your ground, making certain that the person knows their place and the line that should not be crossed. But one can do that very elegantly and very dignifiedly without having to posture and perform and create mere puffery out of an image that you believe that the person needs to feel. But
Mm,
honestly, it's not required. You just need to be as straightforward, candid, but with enough politeness and firm balance of politeness and firmness. And I think that actually ends up working way better than all that performative nonsense that one used to do in their early, youthful,
sure.
inexperienced life.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. Talking to you and being a 77th generation uh, of royalty, I mean, that's pretty unique, you know. How is it? Do you have any siblings, by the way?
No, I'm an only child, thank God.
Okay. So there
So
goes half the complications.
I know, right? Well, not for my parents, but for me, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So then you're it. You're the person who. So I mean, how did the dynasty start? Just a brief overview. and what changed throughout the generations up until where you're at right now?
Well, I mean, it's a long history, Stephen, so I don't know where to begin. But so Mewar is a particular region in India, and over the course of 1500 years, the Mewar dynasty was built on honor, integrity, unwavering, absolutely um, irreducible levels of honor, integrity, and bravery, courage, and so on and so forth, which you would think one can say about any dynasty, right? But I think what really puts a pin in it is the fact that Oz was given the title of Hindua Suraj, which basically means the sun of India.
Oh, wow.
Hindu, right? So Hindua is essentially Hindustan in a sense. Obviously, and Hindu is a religion. Hinduism is a religion, but it was more meant from a holistic perspective, and Suraj means with the sun that sits above all. So the
Wow.
reason we were given this honor, when I say we, not definitely not me or any of the recent generations, but obviously the ancestors, is because of the fact that we were uncompromising in what we thought was the right thing to do. So the legacy was built obviously based on, obviously it was a clan. The clan established itself. It became the whole philosophy was first amongst equals. It was about protecting, preserving their people, their home, their place, unrelenting towards invaders, or for that matter, uncompromising in terms of allying with even their own community when they felt that it wasn't wrong. When they
Mm.
felt that it was wrong, sorry. So I think that's, let's say, the philosophy behind it. But more importantly, Oz is the only dynasty. I don't want to get into the religious context of it, but to put it simply, we have a god. Well, India's got a lot of gods, but there is one particular deity, or let's call it symbolic institution, religious institution or spiritual institution. And for our particular dynasty, again, it was about entrenching and embedding humility even amongst kings.
Mm.
Who pretty much at that time were celebrated not only in India but around the world to some
Mhm.
extent. Um, and it became about that this institution was the king, and we were custodians and the soldiers and the caretakers of his kingdom, right? So I think that embeds the right amount of humility, even a king saying that yes, you've got the title, but you're really not you're not the be all and end all. It is
Wow.
this entity that is the king. You are a custodian of his kingdom. So I think
Interesting.
just seeing this was, I mean, in random bits and pieces, this was the evolution. Today where we are at is, of course, in India there is no official um, monarchy, regardless of which state or regardless of what state, and so on and so forth. But I think that um, that essence of reverence still lives amongst the people for their individual dynasties and legacies, because there are quite a few, of course. We're not the only one. And that is why, as I said, we still um, with the greatest blessings, hold that Hindua Suraj position above all the dynasties in India. Reason
Wow.
being that that's like till perpetuity, and I think that on its own is a great reflection of what we achieved as a family, as a legacy, as a
I love
dynasty.
it. I love it. My father used to say, rest in peace, that we have three brothers, and this is if the branches of a tree stick together, they never break.
Correct.
Um, and now, did we listen to that? No, but
Oh, listen,
but
not
that
not really. There are plenty
not
enough of people who listen to it either. It's fine.
exactly. So it's one of those things that, it's amazing that what you're coming from. What are your um everybody's got a gift, okay? I realized early in my life that writing was my gift. I didn't know what it came, but I started writing stuff and poetry, and then all of a sudden I got into screenplays, and I wrote the wrong screenplays. I learned along the way. 20 years later, De Niro, Bruce Willis, blah, blah, blah. That's my gift. That's what got me in the room, like storytelling, right? What's your gift?
God, I don't think I've ever been asked this question. If you ask my mom, she'll say, well, I don't think she's that terribly gifted. As a joke, of course. She's very proud of
Sure.
everything I do, being an only child. How can she not be? Um, oh, God, see, when you're asking some very difficult questions,
I told you
do
it'd be
I
a
even
little different.
but I'm really loving this because I must say, because I really shy away from a lot of, podcasts. And as you can imagine, my office is dealing with at least half a dozen requests a month. And we usually say no
Wow.
to more because it just end up sounding so scripted by the end of it. It's the same questions,
Right.
it's just the fluidity just doesn't exist, which today I'm so happy that it does, and it's such a refreshing conversation, in spite of the fact that I might have a little tiff with you later for asking such tough questions. No, okay, gift. I don't know whether I would even call it a gift, but I think just the fact that I've always been very rooted in the balance of love and affection and unity and solidarity being the biggest priority for me in life. But I've always had a sense of pragmatism in life.
Mm,
Uh, I can see the good and the bad and the ugly all in the same spectrum and um, balance out the essence of not losing the spirit of love, not losing the spirit of understanding beyond just what's available at face value, being able to, I guess, see the motivations because of which why people might do the things that they do or behave the way that they do behave. And once you can reason through that, you become unattached, or let's say you become detached from the emotional aspects of it. And then you can understand how the world works while still while still letting your heart be, letting your heart lead rather than your mind,
mm.
right?
Very
Um,
interesting.
which I which I never really understood until very late in life. I mean, I knew I was doing all of these things, but I couldn't understand. I couldn't put it into words in a sense. Like I didn't
Mm,
understand what was this way of looking at things that I had somehow always had. And then later on, of course, through obviously much reading and philosophy and spirituality, and I mean, I'm not religious, but
mm,
I like to look at science and spiritualism and overlap it and see how quantum, mechanics and quantum physics, sorry, work alongside spiritual sort of, concepts. So I think through a
mm.
lot of reading and then reading texts and texts of philosophers from all over the world, I think I've come to understand the fact that it all boils down to one simple thing, that if you can just remain detached enough from letting your mind lead you into situations or lead you into actions and reactions, and let your heart be the guiding force, but use your mind to actually filter
Wow.
through for preservation more than anything else, right? For
Wow.
preservation,
Right.
protection of what you need, of your own being, your family, of course, to begin with, and of course, protecting then what is yours and what you endeavor to do, your mission, your purpose, your objectives,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And obviously the world is in a place, because world is in a place where you can just be naive and all about love and peace and all that stuff.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't work like that, but it can be the spirit with which you operate while still attaching enough practicality, logic, and pragmatism to the way you execute life, I guess.
Amazing. Amazing. So, do you work with any, I know you do, but just want to clarify, charities and other different types of organizations that is close to your heart?
Okay, so we have our own foundation, of course, within the family, and we do a fair bit of obviously charitable works through that. My way of doing charity, and I've always believed that it begins at home. So be it by way of educating the children of our staff, making sure that they have the platform that their parents didn't. Um, It can all be very, charities have education and healthcare and, all sorts of things in, as their verticals and purpose missions and so on and so forth. We've always looked at it from the point of view that let's look at our immediate community. What do they need, right? If
Mm,
there's a school
mm,
in an area close to where we live or where we have a
right.
certain, commercial asset, let's make sure we do right by that,
Got it.
and that led to, obviously, because I look after my father's family office, now my husband's, I then instituted my own private equity platform, which is a co-investment thing. And so amongst all of this, we've embedded this practice that when we walk into a certain asset as an investor, be it majority or an influencing minority stake, our terms are uncompromising from a CSR perspective. So we are willing
Got
to
it.
let go of those couple of bips or percentage points in our returns, but make certain that, okay, now we're going to build this infrastructure in this place, or we're going to create a philanthropic vertical, right? That may eat away a little bit into our returns, but at the end of the day, it actually ends up having some sort of a social impact. Um, and the reason we do this is because I do not believe in pure philanthropic endeavors, because I don't think they have the sustainability quotient that otherwise, if you create a more pragmatic framework, which would be like, I'm not saying ours is the only way to do it. I'm saying this is one way I feel we can sustain our social impact work um, by marrying economics to social good and social impact, be it by
Got
way
it.
of education, health access, health equity, general socioeconomic weaker sections of societies, upliftment, and so on and so forth. So I
Got it.
think for launch sustainability, we marry them both. But also, I'm on the board of Public Foundation, which is a phenomenal, phenomenal foundation attached to the UN, and we are actually working on quite a few SDG goals together, again, creating practical solutions and frameworks which are geoeconomically aligned as well as geopolitically aligned, to the extent that we hope to create more securitization and stability in the world that we live in today.
Amazing. Yeah.
Um, and create basically reimagine diplomacy as tangible infrastructure by way of economic policies, creating originating assets that would affect more stabilization of supply chains, geoeconomic and geopolitical influence by way of policy making, better research instruments, and obviously and social good, overall social good. So one of
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
primary projects now, literally one of the flagship projects is to address food and water insecurity. So,
Wow.
like I said, there's so many ways that we're
Well,
trying to do good, but I
yeah.
don't think I wouldn't say they all fit into the charitable bucket because they're different
Sure.
frameworks,
Sure. No,
but they
that's
are charitable.
amazing. You know, you're right. When you said I look at my immediate surroundings, I thought about the book The Alchemist, where he
Yes.
goes searching for the world and then he comes back to where he's at. Okay, so we got a few minutes left. I'm going to ask you some questions. What's your favorite movie?
Right. Oh God, what a good question. Hatari.
Real?
So yes, it's been my all-time favorite. God, I love that movie. I've watched it, I think, maybe 150 plus times since I was a baby.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, who's your favorite actor?
Ooh. Okay, it's a toss-up between George Clooney and Brad Pitt.
It's not a bad toss-up.
Yeah, I know, right? I just can't make up my mind who I love more.
If I only had Clooney or Brad Pitt, that's the million-dollar question in Hollywood. Can you get Brad Pitt?
Okay, if you put aside the aesthetics, I would say Al Pacino, actually, from a purely
Wow.
from an purely acting based reverence, Al Pacino.
Well, it's funny you bring him up because I've met Al Pacino, and one of my friends is his producing partner, Barry Navidi,
Oh,
and yeah, and Al Pacino's a little man. He's a little man, and he's I'm 6 foot tall. He's about 5'7", 8" maybe. And when I met
okay.
him, he was like because my name is Steven Cyrus apparently, And he's like, Cyrus, I know you, meaning the Cyrus the Great. I said, well, that's a very
Right.
honor. But he is actually one of the nicest people
Really?
you'll meet. Oh, he's amazing. He's very, very open, very kind, amazing
Okay.
human being. So Al Pacino, he's got two movies coming out, and about an artist, about a poet. He's amazing, Shakespearean. Um,
Yes. Truly
Listen,
amazing. You and I are going to be friends now because I need to meet this gentleman of such
uh,
profound,
that's an
profound
offline
human.
conversation. We'll talk
I
offline.
know.
But so listen, I mean, I'm actually some of the questions that obviously I've looked you up on different panels and some of the interviews you had, and I wanted to make this quite an organic conversation. And obviously there's a million other things I can ask you, but how do you see the future, macro and micro, in the world that you operate in, West and the East, and then we'll sum it up.
In what context, Stephen? Are we talking about in terms of global stability? Are we talking about economics? Are we talking about what are we talking about? Give me some context.
Opportunity of growth in business and the ups and downs of that, within the next, I don't know, 10 years, but just kind of a overview. You don't have to get into details.
Of course. So I would say, and I know this will sound terribly biased, but if one looks at the macro and the micro, so and we in fact practice top down and bottom up in all our forensic analysis of everything that we do, right? And that's exactly why we reverse originate assets. We don't just invest in things that are already available. Um, Global South is absolutely the place to be. Where specifically in Global South? Of course, again, sounding terribly biased, but I would say India. One, because geopolitically it is in a relatively more stable, non-coveting uh, position. It is a country that never really has in the past, it's a civilization state. It's never in the past gone out and coveted other people's things. It's defended itself, right?
Mm,
Today, it has emerged as an architect of influence. It's found its pivotal place in the global order, the new global world order. It does not have the deviant state mentality that some nations obviously today have, which obviously live in the global north as well as the global south. So I think in terms of where do we see growth with relative stability and security, it would be definitely global south. And within global south, there are a few nations, not only India, of course, but India has the demographics. We have the volume in terms of population, we have growing infrastructure, we have the GDP growth, that is still some way to continue uh, on the path that it is, a northeasterly trajectory perhaps. um, so yes, from that perspective I see global south as a place to be. From a societal perspective, which is even more imperative, I would say, we are in rampant degradation societally, and are in a critical and a crucial need for societal repair. And I think again, places that can offer that are places that have a lot of history, a lot of civilizational history and precedent of value systems, which obviously a
mm,
lot of us have also lost along the way whilst aping the more modernized world. But it's starting to re-emerge, and there are a lot of
mm,
we are working it's so hard at educational reform to reinstill value systems, not
mm,
just Eastern or Western, just human value system, basic societal value systems. So I think the closer we are to, say, Europe, certain places in Europe, of course, not all of it, places like India and others, where there is a certain value system that has existed time immemorial, will be the places where we will find more bliss. And
Princess, it's been such a pleasure to have you on this podcast and this conversation. I want to thank you for coming on board.
And Stephen, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to have such a delightful conversation. I'm so very pleased to actually have a conversation that's been quite profound, light-hearted, and absolutely perfectly and terrifically refreshing. Thank you so much.